The unseen current. The Sea of Galilee lay flat and hard under a brutal sun. A calm that felt like it was mocking Simon. His own gut was a knot of worry. Day after day, his nets came up near empty, slimy weeds, the odd undersized fish no good for selling, too bitter to eat. The wood of his boat, his old workhorse, felt rough under his calloused hands. Every groove a testament to years of backbreaking work that now brought nothing but deeper lines on his face and an ache in his belly. His shoulders throbbed, a dull, constant pain that echoed the sharp, dry rasp of his daughter Leah's cough. A sound that filled their small stone house even when he was miles out on the water. And then there was the debt to the tax collector. A man whose shadow seemed to grow longer and heavier each season, pressing down, threatening to crush what little spirit he had left. He'd tried it all, new fishing spots, mending his nets till his fingers bled, even extra prayers. But the fish were gone, like the lake itself had turned on him. Other fishermen offered a sympathetic nod or a knowing look. They knew the struggle, but none had answers. Whispers had started, though, drifting through Capernaum and the villages. Talk of a man from Nazareth, a teacher named Jesus. They said he spoke with a strange power, did things, healings, that no one could explain. Simon, a man who lived by the hard realities of sun, salt, and survival, had always dismissed such tales. Miracle workers, self-proclaimed prophets. They came and went, mostly fakes or fools. But the fear for Leah, her small face paler each day, her breath so shallow, it ate at his common sense. He saw the terror in his wife Sarah's eyes, the same terror he tried to hide. The local healers with their herbs and chants had done nothing. The smell of dried plants and despair clung to their home. One evening, dragging his boat onto the pebbles, an older woman, Miriam, came up to him. Her face was a map of wrinkles from the sun, but her eyes held a strange light, a calm that didn't belong in their hard world. She didn't offer empty comfort. Instead, she spoke softly, her words like cool water on parched earth, of finding springs in the desert, light in the deepest dark. She mentioned the Nazarene, not with the usual gossip, but with a quiet certainty that poked through Simon's defenses. She talked about a different kind of net, one that caught hope, not fish. Simon listened, mostly quiet. The waves lapping the shore a somber beat to her words. He just nodded, tired. But walking home that night, under a sky full of cold stars, her words stuck with him, a tiny seed in dry ground. The image of Leah, so frail, her small hand gripping his finger with surprising strength, fought with his practical mind. What if there was something more than just endless work and sorrow? The thought was a dangerous spark. He tried to snuff it out, but it flickered, stubborn. The weight of his world felt huge, the choices clear as mud. Keep going like this, getting nothing, or grab at this sliver of an unbelievable chance. The air in his home was thick with sickness and the unspoken fear between him and Sarah. He looked at Leah, sleeping badly, her chest rising and falling with a painful catch, and something hardened in him. A decision made not from faith, but from a father's deep, aching love, a desperate gamble against a cruel fate. The unseen currents of his life were pulling him, shifting him towards something unknown. Once he'd made up his mind, the decision sat in Simon's gut like a stone. Heavy, uncomfortable, but also something solid in the mess of his thoughts. To leave his boat, his living, even for a few days, felt like betraying everything he knew, like stepping off a cliff. Sarah, his wife, her eyes red from worry and no sleep, hadn't argued when he told her. She just nodded, a silent sign of their shared desperation, her hands twisting her apron, a small, nervous habit that said more than words about her fear, and that tiny bit of hope. He packed little, a water skin, some dried figs, a bit of coarse bread. That was it for a journey into God knows what. The early morning air was cool on his face as he left Capernaum. The familiar village sounds, roosters, the distant calls of fishermen already on the lake, fading behind him. He walked south, the dusty track following the edge of the Galilee, the water glinting to his left, a constant reminder of his failures and the fragile life he was fighting for. The land was a mix of greens and browns, rolling hills with olive trees and small clusters of houses. He wasn't used to long walks. His world was the rocking of his boat, the wide water. Each step on the uneven ground felt wrong, his muscles complaining. Doubts buzzed around his head like flies. Was he a fool, chasing a ghost story? What could this Nazarene really do that healers and prayers hadn't? He pictured the looks he'd get from men who knew him as a practical fisherman, not some chaser of mystics. But the image of Leah struggling to breathe pushed him on, every footstep a kind of prayer, a plea. He met others on the road. Merchants with loaded donkeys, their faces all business. Families, maybe pilgrims heading to Jerusalem. Their songs and chatter a world away from Simon's grim quiet. A few talked about the teacher from Nazareth. Voices hushed with awe or alive with excitement. Telling stories of bread appearing from nowhere, of blind men seeing. Simon listened, saying nothing, his skepticism fighting a tiny flicker of something he wouldn't name. He also heard people muttering about a troublemaker, someone stirring up trouble with God. He filed those words away too, adding to the storm inside him. The sun climbed, beating down hard. Dust covered his tunic, caked his sandals. His throat was dry, the water in his skin warm and no real help. He'd rest sometimes under a scraggly carob tree, chewing a fig, the sweetness a brief break from his bitter thoughts. He remembered Miriam's calm face, her quiet belief. Her words hadn't been an order, more like she'd opened a door a crack, hinted there might be another way to see things. He wasn't sure what she meant by a net that gathered hope, but the words stayed with him. As he walked, he looked at the land. The wind bending the tall grass, wildflowers pushing up through stony ground. It was a harsh kind of beauty, a feeling of old struggles and life just going on. Maybe, he thought, there were things happening beyond what he understood, currents deeper and stronger than the ones that moved the fish. This journey wasn't just about walking. With every mile, it felt like a layer of his hard cynicism wore off, not replaced by blind belief, but by a raw openness, a willingness to just see, to face whatever was coming. The desperation for Leah was the chisel slowly chipping away at the stone in his heart. He was a man stripped of his usual certainties, walking towards a fragile maybe. The road dust felt like it settled into him, a sign of how low he'd been brought, but still he kept moving. After 2 days of hard walking, feet blistered, body aching right through, Simon got to a small village in the Galilean hills. A crowd was there. You could almost taste the energy in the air. Excitement, respect, just plain curiosity. People were pressed together, faces turned to one man in the middle. He was speaking, not from a platform, but just standing among them. His voice was clear, strong, carrying over everyone without him seeming to try. This was Jesus of Nazareth. Simon, more used to being alone on the sea, felt overwhelmed by all the bodies, the strong feelings swirling around. He stayed on the edge, watching. The man, Jesus, wasn't what he'd pictured. No big shows, no drama. He was dressed simply, like men Simon knew. His strength, if that's what it was, seemed to come from somewhere deep and quiet inside him. A kindness you could see in his eyes, a gentle power in his voice. He talked about a kingdom not of this world, about loving your enemies, about faith as small as a mustard seed moving mountains. His words were simple, but they hit a nerve, a truth that slipped past Simon's doubts and touched something deep. Simon didn't get all of it. Some of the stories were confusing. The ideas challenged how he thought the world worked. But he watched the faces listening. He saw tears on old, weathered cheeks. Hope lighting up eyes that had seen too much sadness. He saw a lame man helped up by his friends, his face desperate. He saw mothers holding sick children close, their eyes fixed on the teacher. Then, a woman near the edge of the crowd, her child burning with fever for days, pushed forward, her voice choked with pain. Jesus stopped talking, turned to her. No big announcement, no fancy ritual. He just looked at the child, then at the mother, his face full of an incredible tenderness. He said a few quiet words to her, words Simon couldn't catch. But he saw the tension go out of the mother's shoulders, the fear in her eyes soften into a kind of wonder. Later, as the crowd started to break up, Simon found himself standing near where Jesus had been. He hadn't tried to talk to him. He wouldn't have known what to say. But for a second, their eyes met. In that short look, Simon didn't feel judged for his doubts, or pitied for his trouble, but just seen, understood. It was a look that didn't promise an easy fix, but a deep, steady presence. Something broke inside Simon then, like an old dam giving way. It wasn't a sudden conversion, not like in the stories. It was quieter, a slow turn towards a light he hadn't realized was there. He started home the next morning. The path felt easier, the sun not so harsh. The doubts weren't gone, but now there was a fragile new feeling with them. Hope. A quiet hope, small, but it wouldn't go away. When he finally got to his village and saw his little stone house, his heart pounded. Sarah met him at the door, her face changed. The worry lines were still there, but her eyes shone. "Leah," she said, her voice shaking. "Leah's sitting up. Her fever's gone." She asked for food. Simon rushed inside. His daughter, frail but awake, smiled at him, a real smile he hadn't seen in weeks. He knelt by her cot and took her hand. It wasn't burning anymore, just warm with life. The relief was so huge it almost hurt. He didn't know how it happened. He couldn't explain it. But holding Leah's hand, he remembered the look in the Nazarene's eyes, the quiet power, the overwhelming kindness. The sea was still there, its fish uncertain. The tax collector would still come. But Simon wasn't the same man. The unseen current had carried him to a new shore, where hope wasn't just a whisper, but something real, a force as strong as the wind and the waves. His nets might still come up empty sometimes, but his heart, he knew, would stay full.